chicken thighs last night. So,
Oh,
and they
good.
come in like packs of 10, and we're not really big eaters, so we're gonna do leftovers.
All right. Well, that sounds good. I started phase one today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I was telling
So
Julia that I was kind of envious of you. I was telling her, I was like, man, I think I want to try 75 hard again because Austin's like looking good. He's all freaking disciplined and everything, and now he's about to start. Now he's about to start phase one, and I'm like, dang, I kind of want to do something hard.
the hardest thing so far was that cold shower for 5 minutes. It took my heart about 45 minutes to recover from that.
Oh
I
wow.
felt I felt I did not feel good after doing that. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to run through this. Finding deals. This is where all the deals come from. Albert, you have found some crazy deals in some unlikely places. But
Yeah.
you don't really find deals. You have to create them, right? Great deals are not found, they're created. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and get started into this. So, where are these deals being found? People are buying and rehabbing these real estate deals. They're flipping houses, they're holding houses or commercial properties, or they're developing. And how do you know that when you acquire any type of real estate asset that you're not going to lose a bunch of money on it? Like, how do you know the deal is good? Like Albert, like, give me an example. I just looked at a house in Baytown that's a wholesaler has for $85,000. The comps are like 140 to 150,000 for 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom. Little Baytown houses, 1950s build. How do you know, like, what catches your eye when it comes to looking through deals?
Well, if I'm looking on the MLS, I think I'm looking in specific areas, right? I'm not all over the place. So that's like one thing I would, what we teach our students to focus on a market. It doesn't have to be one zip code. Like I'm looking at one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, about 9 or 10 zip codes, but they're all around the same area, right? So that's
Did you start with like a few of those and start expanding, or how did it start?
no, I think I had an area that encompassed probably eight of those, and I might have added one or two along the way.
Okay.
So like Edo Medical Center, Museum District, Second Ward, Third Ward, those areas are kind of all within the loop because that's where I want to invest. That's where I'm looking. So you're asking like kind of what are some things I look for? If I'm looking on the MLS, I'm looking for high days on market. High days on market means that seller could be motivated
Hmm.
and like have they had any price drops along the way? If they're high days on market and on one price, that's good and bad, right? High days on market
Yeah.
means they might be motivated, but no drop in price means they may be stuck on their price, you know.
Or
So
it
we
could
just
mean
got
that
a prop.
it could mean they have an agent that's not really pushing them to price it appropriately.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. 100%. We just got a property under contract like literally 5 minutes ago. It just got
Congratulations.
executed and that came off the MLS and it's been on the market for 8 months. So
8 months on the MLS. What was it originally listed at, and what?
235, 239, I think. Let me
And I'm
see.
I'm assuming you got it under contract for less than 239.
What do you think I got it for?
I hope you got it, for at least 10% below list price.
It was originally listed for 236.
Hmm.
And they dropped it on February 26th to 214. We got it under contract for less than that.
So you're under 200.
We're yes, under 200.
Congratulations. So
Thanks, man.
so are you going to rehab and flip it, or are you going to buy, or are you going to hold it?
Yeah, so this is in 77023, kind of Eastwood area, but it's on the west of 45. So
Okay.
it's not like on the east of 45 where Edo, Eastwood, all of those houses are. This is right on the west because 77023 kind of comes a little bit west of 45, but most of
Like
it's on.
Sunnyside?
No, no, no. No, it's near Edo and Eastwood,
Okay.
near
Oh, okay.
downtown.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. So, running the numbers, I didn't even go walk the property, by the way. So I just wanted to see if I could get it under contract for the price that we wanted, that we felt was going to be fine. And we're hoping our renovation budget comes in at about 50 to 55K. That's what we've given
Yeah.
ourselves. Just going off the property pictures, it shows that it was renovated more recently in 2008. So I'm like, okay, cool. Looking at the photos, just looks like mainly interior stuff. No, we're not moving walls. I probably don't have to redo electrical, plumbing, those kinds of things. So that was on the MLS. So that's kind of what we look for is look in a certain area, look for high days on market, and then here's a really good tip for you. All right, especially if somebody's watching the recording. They didn't get this tip on the first one. Is we look for properties that have lots. The lot size is 5,000 square feet or larger. All right. And the reason why is we want to have the flexibility of being able to maybe add square footage or build like an ADU or garage apartment in the back to really
Okay.
jack up.
To
If the if
to give
that
some
area supports it.
flexibility.
Yeah, if that area supports it. So, we've gone in for properties and given competitive offers because we're creative with how we're going to exit
Yeah.
the property, what we're going to do to it. So
Like adding a bathroom or adding a garage or an
right,
ADU.
converting the garage, adding square footage, or you have a garage in the back, building onto it, right? If this foundation, everything supports it, adding some living space back there.
You mentioned something that we're going to discuss in a couple of weeks, but you spoke about the number that was required in order to get under contract, and a lot of people would hear you say, "We got it under contract without even looking at the property." But the truth is, that's not really that crazy because the number, a lot of people will lose out on a good deal because they get so hung up on the offer number
Yeah.
when at the end of the day, there's three or four more opportunities to negotiate that
Well,
number after
yeah,
you've
and
already been under contract.
you give yourself an option period. So, we made our offer strong in certain areas. We knew we wanted an option period because I haven't looked at the property yet. So I want to be able to go
Hmm.
walk it with my contractors. I'll get numbers back from them in 2 or 3 days. So well within the option. But my agent, my superstar agent called, built rapport through text primarily with the listing agent and kind of gave her an initial number, and all she said was, "That's low. We declined an offer at that price." That's all she said.
Yeah.
So then I went and made sure that I had funding available for it, and we increased our offer a little bit. She built some more rapport, asked if this number would work, and that agent just said, "If you send it in writing, I'll send it to my." Actually, she said, "Let me talk to my seller." Then she came back and said, "If you write it up, I'll present it to my seller."
Hmm.
And that's how it went. I mean, and that all took place within like a few hours.
So we're going to go through
Yeah.
just different places that these deals come from. And Albert, you're talking about number one. This is number one on the list is your relationship with your agent, which happens to be your wife.
Yeah.
Um, Talk about how agents are central to the deal. Is she the only agent you work with? Obviously, you're friends with some other agents.
Yeah.
Um,
She's not the only agent that we work with. I mean, I've gotten deals from other agents in our network. But the key is like even if you're calling on a property like you're calling the listing agent, that listing agent could be a resource for you in the future. If
yeah,
you deal with them and talk to them with integrity, and above board on everything, and you're giving them numbers, and maybe the offer doesn't work out, but you're explaining to them how you got to the numbers, you present yourself in a professional way, that agent could send you deals in the future.
right.
But that agents too, like when you have these relationships, they have access to the MLS, so
Hmm.
they can help you run numbers, right? You want to verify those multiple ways, okay? And they're going to be able to talk to you about the market in that area, all right? Um, we talked about this earlier, is you want to make sure that agent is also an investor friendly agent
Right. What's the
because
difference between an investor-friendly agent? Because not all agents are investor-friendly, are they?
yeah, so investor friendly agents, in my opinion, are agents that number one will put in low offers for you. I've
Yeah.
encountered agents where I've talked to them about writing a low offer, and their response was, "I'm not doing that. That's going to make me look bad," And I'm like, I'm the client,
Yeah.
So we just moved on, and you find an agent that's willing to do that. I had an agent, one of the first agents I worked with in 2021. She's based out of Houston, younger agent, very eager and hungry. I think she wrote like maybe 20 offers, low offers on
Hmm.
properties in Galveston, Texas City, Lamar, Houston, everywhere until one of them got accepted. And she had
Right.
no problems writing these low offers. And so you want to have somebody that's going to be in your corner. You want to make sure that they can negotiate on your behalf, build rapport on your behalf, and also they have to be good communicators. And really, I like to call them bus drivers,
Bus
right? They're
drivers.
they're letting people on and off the bus. They're managing that whole process with the title company, survey, the listing agent, the lender, whoever that is. They're managing those communications and making
They're
sure you
they're
get to the
part of your
destination.
team. They're coordinating the chaos and they're taking work off your plate. And if you
Absolutely, yeah.
end up in business with the wrong anybody, they're going to get pieces of your job back to you. So
Mhm.
that's important. We talked also about being having clear communication with your agent, defining your buy box, how
Oh, yeah.
critical that is, and then we need your agent to be a closer. I know from the agent side, I've been in many deals. In fact, I'm in deals right now where the agent on the other side of the deal is it's fine if they don't have the experience, if they're willing to work and talk, I'm happy to help people. But when they're not communicating or where they're intentionally doing ignorant things to, like I said, give you pieces of your job back, you got to avoid that because
Yeah.
there's enough chaos out there as it is. So number one, agent to agent relationships. Um, you mentioned access to the MLS, also speed and being
Yeah.
able to extract the data, being able to provide the data because a good investor friendly agent is going to make sure that you make money on the deal because he or she's going to make money when you make money.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we won't have much business to do together in the future.
You said speed. I'll just touch on that real quick. You said speed. I've been in situations where it's been like we've had the best offer because we were the first offer. All
Hmm.
right.
Hmm.
And I've been in situations where we were the best offer because we were the last offer.
Yeah,
And everything in between just got missed, right? Or
yeah,
just wasn't good enough, right? Or you like this particular house, been on the market for 8 months. Maybe they had an offer at above where ours was 2 or 3 months ago,
hmm,
but they just declined it and they're just waiting, right? And now they're tired of waiting. So when I talked to my agent about calling and building rapport, she did that pretty much immediately. As soon as she got
yeah,
free time, she did that and started that process. And then when it came time to write up the offer, writing up offers isn't really like it's time consuming.
yeah,
There's a bunch of documentation because you want to make sure the offer is complete, right? You don't want to
yeah.
leave anything out or give them an out, right? It needs to be complete. So that takes time. So having an agent that is fast and knowledgeable, super important.
Very good. Yeah. Then number two, networking for referrals. Where do you network? Where's some great places for a new agent or any new agent, new investor or any
I mean,
investor?
I would suggest and encourage people to get connected to any local like real estate meetups or RIAs is what they're called. You
Hmm.
can find a lot of those on these Facebook groups. If you just Google, I'm sorry, in your Facebook search bar, if you just type in Houston real estate, you'll probably have like 5 or 6 groups
Yeah.
like drop down, and they're free to join. And sometimes there's real estate investing groups in there that have these meetups. So
Yeah.
getting plugged in there, you can network, you can find deals
It's
on that
easy.
Facebook group. You can also find wholesale deals too. But networking, you also want to put your stuff out there on social media, letting people know what you're doing, right?
That's
And
right.
that kind of bleeds into our next strategy. But
Yeah.
when we talk about referrals, people have to know what we're looking for if they're going to
Exactly.
refer something to us, right? If you're
Right.
just doing everything quietly behind the scenes, running your numbers, talking to wholesalers, you're missing out on all of this
Right.
information, this whole referral network, if you just let people know this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at a event on Wednesday. So we had our event on Thursday, and I was at a different event on Wednesday. And somebody that I met at that event, I think it was New Western was hosting a happy hour, and I
Oh,
went to the New Western. And one of the lenders I met there called me today, said, "Hey, we're doing a an event on Thursday. Come out to this." So
nice.
you meet people, they start inviting you. So number two, really any type of event networking, I would recommend at least once or twice a month is probably good. You
Yeah.
learn so much if you just put yourself out there and just ask
Hmm.
great questions. I host an event every third Thursday. By the way, anybody that watches this video or that's ever on this call, you're invited to these events. We do one every third Thursday, every single month. Credible people. Some of the people on this call will show up and share their knowledge. So great resource of knowledge. Number three, online lead source. This is a non-negotiable at this point, right? The internet's been out for, I don't know, decades now. But
Yeah.
if you're not getting on Facebook and just letting yourself be known what you're doing, that's important. Albert, how have your online resources contributed to your business as a real estate investor?
I mean, really just again, putting yourself out there, like I mentioned, letting people know what we're looking for, though that's a source of leads, right? You can look
Hmm.
at properties on Zillow, you can look at these properties on Facebook Marketplace and these Facebook groups that I mentioned about joining. You can get on wholesalers buyers
Yeah,
lists. And good wholesalers will reach back out to you, right, to figure out
yeah.
what your buy box is. The wholesalers that are just kind of a dime a dozen, they're just going to put you on their list and just fire off everything to you. And then what we teach our students then is to create like a separate folder in your Gmail or email and create a filter. So now all of your leads are going into that one inbox or that one
Hmm.
folder. Then once a day or twice a day or however long, create some consistent rhythm where you're doing it consistently. Go underwrite, go review those
Yeah,
deals. Even if it's not necessarily in an area you're interested in, get used to doing it, utilizing those tools, and then when one comes in the area where you're looking in, you'll be
yeah,
ready to jump on it.
absolutely. And
Like you were talking about commercial, right? Like LoopNet and Crexy.
yeah. So as far as online, so you mentioned wholesale lists, which I'll get into that. We'll talk about social media. On the residential side, HAR or your local MLS, which you'll
Mhm.
have a lot of back end access to that if you're working with an agent, but Zillow and like homes.com will have like your for sale by owners, which we'll talk about that in a second. But on the commercial, so I'm glad you brought up commercial. LoopNet.com, that's a free resource. So if you're interested in, maybe multifamilies or retail investments, right now in the city of Houston, industrial is growing. Industrial is probably growing faster than any asset type in our market right now. But you gotta be on LoopNet or another source is Crexy. Crexy's free to register. They have some um, paid features on top of that, but you can right there you can see quite a bit. So LoopNet.com, Crexy. Um, we didn't mention for sale by owners. So, and you can see these online too, but a lot of times a for sale by owner, they're just going to put a sign in the yard. Like that should catch a new investor's attention
Yeah, yeah,
because it may not even need that much work and they may be willing to uh to make a deal right there on the
yeah.
spot.
I
So
mean,
they
sometimes too, those properties are paid off, and so
yeah,
you might have some creative ways to get into those properties.
yeah,
And like subject to or seller finance, or I'm sorry, not subject to, like seller finance
yeah,
options for those properties that are paid off. But Zillow, I mean, even today, like I've got saved searches in Zillow and Redfin and HAR where I get emails all throughout the day. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming, but I still look at them. I just kind of
yeah,
scroll through, and what's good for me is I just look for zip codes. I'm just looking in specific areas, so it's not overwhelming to me.
Right,
because I can
right.
go through there, scan through there. None of these zip codes are interesting to me. Delete, right?
Yeah.
If it is interesting to me, I'll save it and then come back to it later.
You can so you should be able to set yourself up on searches. So, HR, LoopNet, I mean, all these sites you can do a search.
Hmm.
Another type of search you can do a Google search, like a Google alerts are really
Hmm.
good. So if your dream house is like that four, 2.5 in, in an average market, and you have that specific, zone to, Clear Creek ISD, you can actually configure Google to send you alerts whenever somebody posts something like that. So Google search, Google Alerts is really good. Um, let's talk about off market hunting. You've had some luck with this, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I've had luck with either driving for dollars. Again, off market is just really anything that's not on the MLS that doesn't have an agent representing them. So that could be a wholesale deal, right? But even more off market is maybe you're doing your own marketing. You're driving for dollars. You're sending out cold texts or cold calling people, or maybe you're handwriting letters, or maybe you've got a postcard
Hmm.
campaign going with some company, right? And another thing too, it kind of goes back to this referral network. We've gotten some off-market leads through referrals that
Yeah,
have been very lucrative for
definitely.
us,
Yeah. What is
because
what is driving for
what
dollars?
driving for dollars is, let's say you have a habit of going to the grocery store every Wednesday at 6 p.m., right? That's a habit.
Hmm.
They have something called habit stacking. On your way
Yes.
there, drive a different route. All right. Every Wednesday, just drive a different route through a different neighborhood, and you're looking for subject properties. You're looking for properties that might have high grass, right? Maybe there's still a tarp on the roof, or maybe the house just looks vacant or abandoned. All
Hmm.
right. That's kind of driving for dollars. You're going to write down the address, and then you're going to take that address, find out who the owner is, try to find their contact information, and number one, either send them a letter, text them, or call them, or find out where they live and knock on their door.
Yeah.
It's and all of those things I did from the easiest to the hardest, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
lowest hanging fruit, everybody's doing that. The
Yeah.
hardest thing, which is typically door knocking, there aren't many people doing that, right?
Yeah.
So when you're doing the harder thing, you have less competition.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah, they're not getting their door knocked on
right.
very often, right? So off market, so things to look for: distressed signs, broken windows, boarded windows, tarps on the roof,
Tall
long,
grass.
tall grass, overgrown bushes, overgrown trees. These are all signs that a house is either in
Yeah.
disarray or it's been abandoned. Go ahead.
Another telltale sign too is, and you probably see these houses but don't pay too much attention to them, is like they don't have any window coverings on the inside, where
Hmm.
you can just drive by and you can see all the way through the house and it's completely
Yeah,
empty. Because
yeah,
typically when people move out, they don't have blinds or curtains or anything like that. And those houses stick out. Those stick out. Those are very easy to see. Because when you see a house where you can see right into the windows and right into the house and there's nothing there. So that's a
yeah.
good one.
And whoever owns that house, they don't want to live there, so
Yeah.
they don't have it rented out or anything. And
Hmm.
if it's not on the market, a lot of
Yeah.
times, would you say in those type of situations, it's usually somebody's passed away and left the house to a family member?
I mean, either that or maybe it's a tyrant landlord and they either had to evict somebody or somebody just moved out and they haven't found anybody to move in yet because they're not sophisticated and they're not really marketing the property. I've seen that a lot. Or it may be a property that might be facing foreclosure where the
Hmm.
homeowner just bounced, like they just left
Yeah,
the house or abandoned the property, basically. Um, a few times though, it could be where the homeowner passed away and maybe it's going through probate or maybe there wasn't a will and the kids or the heirs don't know what to do with the property and it's just kind of sitting there. So those are a little bit harder, but remember, the harder things, you have less competition. So
yeah,
finding out who the heirs are, here's a
yeah.
tip. Here's a tip. One thing that we've done in the past is we'll find out who the owner is, and you can find that through property records. And you can skip trace, which is kind of looking at public databases on the internet to find out their contact information and things like that. Sometimes these databases will tell you how old the person is. And
Hmm.
if they're up there in years, you could also put in your Google search their name, city, obituary.
Maturity. Yeah.
And why would you want to do that? Usually the obituary has the next of kin in that list. So then you can try to figure out who has control of that property. Can you help them, right? You're bringing a solution to them. Can I help you offload this property and not have
Right.
to worry about it anymore? So we've done that in the past and actually picked up a couple of properties that way.
Have you used any online tools that will like tell you like maybe they're behind on their mortgage or maybe the mortgage is paid off?
Yeah, so like I know PropStream does that. We use a
PropStream.
tool called Propelio.
Propelio.
And Propelio is about $97 a month, and it has direct MLS access in Texas and several other states in the United States. But Texas, it has real sold data, and it also has information with regard to their mortgage. You know,
Yeah.
if it's paid off or if it has been like a trustee sale, like or foreclosure, it'll give you some information there too.
We came across this reminds me of the craziest story. It's important to know that when you are talking to people, you ask great questions and you listen for clues because they'll tell you about other people, they'll refer you to other people, and it can get very interesting if you're, kind of like a detective about it. We found a home with an absentee owner that looked to be occupied, and so we had the hardest time. We couldn't identify the owner of the home, and I forgot what reason. Maybe a client sent us a photo and wanted to know the backstory on it. And so we got in contact with the person occupying the property, and she was the absolute sweetest older lady that was living in the house. And she was like, "Mr. Austin, I'm gonna have to be honest with you. I've been in this house for 30 years, and I believe the landlord passed away about 15 or 20 years ago. And I don't know who to pay my rent to, and I haven't known." She had gone like more than 15 years without paying rent, and she's like, as soon
Wow.
as somebody tells me something, I'll do it. But like apparently there's situations out there where the house is paid off, nobody in the family is, alive anymore. We had a probate
Mhm.
sale. The owner had no spouse, no kids, both his parents had passed away, but he had 43 direct cousins that were next to kin, and
Wow.
the proceeds from the probate were split to them. I know that's kind of on a tangent, but you come across some very interesting stories in
Mhm.
this business.
Yeah.
Um, let's go to the rapid fire. So, wholesalers, bad, good, ugly, yes or no?
I mean, there's some good ones. From my experience, most of them aren't that good. Most of them, watch some YouTube videos, have zero to very little marketing budget, and don't know how to comp properties, don't know how to estimate repairs, and honestly, they hurt a lot of people. Like the bad
Hmm.
wholesalers, they hurt a lot of people in the process. You
Yeah,
know, they hurt themselves because they're wasting their money and their time putting properties under contract. They hurt homeowners, especially homeowners that might be in some distress, like a pre-foreclosure or something. They hurt those homeowners because they just waste their time when they don't have
right.
time to waste, right?
Hmm.
And then they hurt buyers when there might be a newbie investor that they kind of suck in or hoodwink or inadvertently, hoodwink, and it buys his property and overpays for it and now it's kind of stuck holding the bag, you
Right.
know. But then you do have some good wholesalers,
Yeah.
typically individuals, those solopreneurs that aren't working for larger outfits like New Western and Net Worth and Real Acquisition and Investor Lift and all that
Hmm.
you name it, right? These individuals are typically the ones, in my opinion, that you can find better deals. They know how to
Yeah.
break down the marketing. They know how to put the numbers out there. The comps that they provide make sense, right? They're using the correct criteria for looking for comparable properties to estimate the ARV. You, the investor, you're still going to verify all that
Right.
information
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, you are responsible for putting that contract, signing that contract, and paying that earnest money deposit, you are responsible for that. So
That's
always
right.
verify those numbers with wholesalers, agents, anything that someone tells you with regard to a deal.
The wholesalers are the ones in the ecosystem that have the least amount to lose, in my opinion. They're
I
the
agree.
least qualified, and they're reassigning that contract. But at the same time, they do often have deals that you're not going to find anywhere else. So it's still worth having them in your in your back pocket and looking through what they're sending you. Because I bought some good deals from wholesalers too. Auctions. There's several types of auctions.
Uh-huh.
Uh, you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So, you've got mortgage auctions, basically property auctions. If someone falls behind on their mortgage, you can buy the property. Typically, when you buy that property, you're buying it at the auction, which is the first Tuesday of every month, really across the United States. In all
Yeah.
states, that's the same date that the auctions happen. You're
Some
typically going to
counties
be.
are in person and some are like
Yes,
Galveston's
some are in
online, but
person. Some you can go online to like auction.com and a couple other websites that you can bid on these properties. You're typically going to pay cash or cashier's checks for
yeah,
them. Some states I know give you a longer period of time to actually bring the cash. Some of them give you like to the end of the day. Some of them give you like 3 days to bring
yeah,
the cash to finalize the deal. And then you've got tax auctions. So
yeah.
tax auctions and HOA auctions, because an HOA could foreclose on you if you have unpaid assessment dues.
Hmm.
Now, those you really have to be educated on all of this with
Yeah,
regards to auctions before you go in, like know what you're doing. Most of these properties you can't go walk, you don't have access to. You want to make sure the property is even still there, like it's still standing.
yeah,
But property tax auctions, they have something called a redemption period. So that redemption period can vary. It can be 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And what that is if you get the property through that auction, the homeowner now has a period of time to pay you that money back. Basically, redeem the property. But they pay you that money back plus like anywhere from 20 to 25% on top of what you paid. So having a good real estate attorney to kind of walk you through that process and know what they're
yeah.
doing because each one is different, that's super important too.
Expired listings, that that can be a good one. These are listings that were at one point on the MLS. At one point, they had an agent listing it.
Hmm.
And one thing that I found is that a lot of times listings will expire and the seller won't even realize that the listing has expired. So once a listing expires, it's like, you know, sometimes the agents will start calling them but
Yeah.
if you stay on top of that, that can be a good resource as well.
Yeah, expired listings. Expired listings can be good. I know what we've trained our students to do is if you're going to look for expired listings, we typically look for expired listings that have low equity. So maybe the
Okay.
mortgage, was originated within the last 3 or 4 years, and the reason why we look at that is because then you can approach the seller with a creative solution like subject to or seller fine or subject to really you can approach them with that because sometimes their old listing agent might have received a subject to offer but didn't really want to present it to the seller,
Right. Right.
because maybe it wasn't presented to the agent the right way. But those are some things that we train our students to take a look at is those expired listings with low equity.
I think one missed opportunity are probate situations. So if you ever get if you know any probate attorneys or, you know, get in front of them, ask them great questions. Some are really awesome and happy to, to share, and some are kind of weird, some are kind of difficult. But and then finally, social media. Again, communicate with the people that know you, let them know what you're doing. You should be posting a little bit here and there. I'm looking for a deal here. Know what you're, again, going back to knowing what your buy box is. Did we miss anything? Maybe
Uh,
someone in the room has something that we missed.
Austin, I have a question.
Richard, go ahead.
So I don't think you missed anything, uh, but could y'all talk more about the um, like if you had much success with the certain auctions? I know myself, like in the deals I do, I would never touch a tax auction because of the redemption period and just the problems that could bring. Um, but
So
do y'all have more experience on the foreclosure auctions or how the different counties are working those currently?
So with here's what I'll tell you about the tax auctions. I think it's critical to you got to understand that with some of those auctions, there is a chance that you can inherit some of the liens that are on that property that may not be disclosed at the auction. You can get clarification on what comes with the property if you have a title company run a report. So if you see, let's say we saw something in Pasadena that is going to auction and we wanted to go to auction to purchase it, well, we can have First American or Great American, Texas American run a history and kind of and then let us know like, hey, there's a second mortgage that it's not being disclosed, and then you'll want to take that into account. Um, we have had I've had clients like auction.com. We've done a deal. In fact, I always tell my sellers, um, excuse me, my buyers, whenever I meet with a buyer, I'll tell them when they ask me if they're going to pay my commission. There's only been one time in the history of my career where the buyer paid my commission, and it was I think it was Douglas Elliman. If that was an auction site that I bought it, I bid on behalf of a client, and they made a lot of money on that deal. That was, and we've been on that one like two or three times before we actually won because it kept going. It kept like failing to meet the reserve. So there are a lot of people. I met a guy in Brazoria. He bought like two houses right there on the steps of the courthouse, right in front of me. And him and I talked for like 45 minutes that day.
Yeah.
So,
I want to add to that, Austin. You mentioned like making sure you know what lanes are on the property, and
mhm.
if you have an attorney or title company that you work with, again, this is why it's super important to have rock stars on your team. They're going to be able to run like just a basic title search for you. Because not only do you want to know what liens are on the property, you also want to make sure you're bidding on the first lien
Yeah.
because sometimes the second lien might auction off, might hold a foreclosure. And you may be bidding on that second lien, which is virtually worthless if there's a superseding lien, above it, which there is going to be that first position. So making sure you're bidding on the right lien on the property, understanding what liens are on the property, understanding what liens get wiped away. Well, because some liens do get some of the what are they called? Subject or whatever the term is, the ones that are below, right? Some of
Hmm.
those get wiped off, go away, depending on the auction, what it is. So
You also
uh,
want to go and look at
Subordinate.
subordinate, that's
subordinate.
it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
there you go. You want to look at previous listings. There was a house in Pasadena that was sold a couple of years ago at market price, and just to find out, the seller failed to disclose that that house had been like a notorious serial killer had done some pretty unspeakable things in that house, and they ended up having to tear it down and condemning the house just based on the history of what happened in there. So sometimes they're, not disclosing things, and if there was something, unmentionable that happened in the house that needs to be brought up.
Yeah.
One more thing about auctions, I don't think we mentioned, but there is an opportunity to buy a house that is going to auction before it goes to auction, right? Have
Hmm.
you had luck doing that, or have you taken a stab
Yeah.
at that strategy?
Yeah. I mean, we've probably
Yeah,
done that about 4 or 5 times,
yeah,
and that
we've done that twice, I think.
yeah, we've done that twice with Richard. I've done it a couple more times solo, probably 2 or 3 more times. And this is kind of goes back to your off market hunting strategy four, which is cold calling and texting, and a combination of pulling the right lists,
Hmm.
right? all that was covered in strategy for off-market hunting is I'm looking for pre-foreclosures, which are properties that have an auction date but haven't gotten there yet,
Yeah.
going through the same process. I already know who the owner is. I got their name on that clerk county clerk filing. I'm gonna skip trace them, and I'm either gonna cold call them, cold text them, or door knock, right, in
Yeah.
that order, and really trying to figure out what their situation is. Can you even help them keep the property? Because some
Right.
homeowners just aren't aware or just knowledgeable about what options their lenders might have available for them. If you always lead with that, people can see that, and you lead with that, then if they do need to sell, then now you're a trusted resource for them. And maybe you can strike up a deal with them that gives them some equity back out, stops the foreclosure, and they have enough to just move on to the next chapter, the next home, you know.
Boom.
I
But we
think
can't
Awesome.
afford another
overall,
option.
Austin, the key to remember there is, and we talk about this all the time on every deal, is the due diligence. That
Yeah.
so easy, especially when you're getting started, to get excited that you got a lead or something's coming together,
Mhm.
and you can so easily be bit by not doing your diligence and finding like I actually was thinking of a couple examples there when Albert was talking about finding one of our deals. We found a subordinate lien existed, that totally changed the deal for us. That was
Mhm.
one that happened. And then back from my former occupation there, remember a story like what you were talking about, Albert, when you said drive by the property, make sure it's still there.
Yeah.
Uh, is when we were removing properties, tearing down houses, we didn't have to supply a notice on that, like a certain date or time. And there'd be people who were, actively pursuing that property or maybe entering into contracts. And,
Mm.
um, we had it set up with our people, go down there and knock it down a certain day, and they never knew.
Mhm.
That's crazy.
I've heard stories where people purchase properties on the auction. They go drive up to the property and it's burned down. You know,
Right.
like
Yep.
it's
That's
gone.
nuts.
Yeah.
That's nuts. All right, well, we can wrap up right there if we don't have any questions. Appreciate Richard jumping on. Rick, you're back. Welcome back. If we don't have any questions, Albert, any last thoughts?
Uh, no, I'm glad Richard did add that because we talked about it just briefly. I'm glad that he kind of punctuated that at the end. It's just doing your proper due diligence. You know, you're gonna get numbers, you're gonna get marketing from different people, whether it's an agent, a wholesaler, or even a referral, that could be trying to help out a friend and they're trying to get the best deal for their friends or family, is you want to run your numbers, get your information from multiple sources until all of it just kind of coalesces and figuring out like what those numbers look like and making the right offers on those deals.
Boom. Good stuff. Well, I appreciate you, man. Go enjoy your dinner. Until
All right.
next time, don't forget, these videos will be posted on YouTube. We'll be doing these calls. In May, we'll probably only be doing the 12:30 calls. We get a good group coming on there. But who knows? We may do the 5:30 ones again one day if demand demands, if the people demand it. We have our happy hour every third Thursday. Look forward to everybody joining us. They all are welcome. I should say most are welcome. There's a couple of people probably not welcome, but and Rick Fisher, appreciate you. Have a wonderful evening. Hope you learned something. Reach out if you need anything. God bless.
All right.